Even 2 centuries after his death, the name Napoleon Bonaparte still commands awe, not only as a conqueror, but as the greatest architect of motion the battlefield has ever known. Generals from Rommel to Patton studied his campaigns, trying to decode how one man, commanding exhausted armies on impossible terrain, could bend entire coalitions to his will. The secret was not brute force, it was speed, deception, and the precision of thought. He did not fight wars, he designed them. The Montenotte Campaign, 1796, the birth of the genius. Spring, 1796. France is still bleeding from revolution. A 26-year-old general, small in stature but blazing in intellect, takes command of the ragged army of Italy, 38,000 half-starved men against 2 enemies twice their size, Austria and Piedmont Sardinia. The Allies believed this campaign would be short. They were wrong. Napoleon realized something the enemy generals did not. They were divided. If they ever united, France would be crushed, so he would never let them unite. His plan was pure deception. He sent fake attacks toward Genoa, making the Austrians believe that the French would strike east. But in secret, he gathered his real force to the west, through the mountain passes of the Ligurian Alps, to strike where no one expected. On April 11th, he struck like lightning. At Montenotte, the Austrian line shattered. Within days, he stormed Millesimo, Dego, and Ceva, severing the link between his 2 enemies. In less than a week, he had destroyed Piedmont's army and forced their surrender. In the words of one Austrian officer, he moves faster than thought. We cannot guess where he will appear next. This was the birth of Napoleon's signature doctrine: divide, deceive, destroy. He never met 2 enemies at once. He made sure they met him one by one and never recovered. The Ulm Campaign, 1805, the dance of the Grande Armée. 10 years later, the world had changed, but Napoleon's mind had not slowed. Europe trembled under the Third Coalition. Britain, Austria, and Russia joined to destroy his new empire. The Austrian army under General Mack advanced into Bavaria, hoping to trap France before the Russians could arrive. But Mack was facing the Grande Armée, a living machine forged by Napoleon himself. He turned an army built for invading England into a juggernaut marching east at unimaginable speed. When Mack expected an attack from the west, Napoleon instead appeared behind him, executing a flawless right-wheel maneuver across the Danube. While Mack waited, confident behind fortifications at Ulm, the French corps moved like chess pieces, circling silently through fog and rain. He never attacked frontally. He simply closed the gates. He sent cavalry charges to the west, mere distractions, while unseen, French troops crossed the Danube to his rear. Within days, every road, every bridge, every escape route was sealed. The Austrian army, 30,000 strong, was surrounded without a single decisive battle. When Mack finally realized his fate, it was too late. Napoleon's trap had already sprung. Supplies gone, communications cut, Mack surrendered his entire force. In the words of Napoleon, we have won a great victory without firing a gun. The Montenotte and Ulm campaigns defined what military historians call the art of annihilation without destruction. Napoleon never sought battle for glory. He sought position, momentum, and control of time itself. To his men, He was not merely a general, he was the clockmaker of war. Every march, every false attack, every sudden strike was calculated to make his enemies move when he wanted them to. And by the time they realized they were dancing, Napoleon had already finished the symphony.
December 2nd, 1805, a day that would echo for centuries. The day Napoleon Bonaparte became immortal. The fields near the small Moravian village of Austerlitz lay silent under a pale winter sun. Before dawn, three armies faced each other across the frozen plain. France against the combined might of Austria and Russia. More than 150,000 men stood ready. The world held its breath. At 36 years old, Napoleon had already defeated coalitions before. But this time, his empire itself stood on the line. He faced two emperors, Francis of Austria and Alexander of Russia. And they believed they had him cornered. What they didn't know was that they were playing on a chessboard Napoleon had already drawn. The deception. Napoleon began by appearing weak. He let his right flank sag deliberately, inviting the Allies to strike where they thought he was vulnerable. From the mist-shrouded heights of Pratzen, the coalition generals watched and smiled. They saw French troops retreating. They believed the Emperor of France was losing his grip. But beneath that calm mask, Napoleon was watching everything. Every move, every line, every hesitation. He turned to his marshals and whispered, "We will lure them down from the heights, and there the sun of Austerlitz will rise for France." At dawn, he gave the signal. His troops withdrew slightly, the trap snapping shut like the jaws of a wolf. The Allies poured down from the high ground, their right wing stretching too far, their center empty, exactly as Napoleon had planned. The counterstroke. At 8 a.m., the fog began to lift. The first rays of sunlight pierced through the mist, illuminating the French lines in a golden glow. Napoleon raised his hand, the drums rolled, and the Grande Armée moved. Marshal Soult's divisions, hidden until now in the valley, surged forward like a tidal wave. 12,000 men marched up the Pratzen heights, bayonets flashing, drums echoing through smoke. From the ridge, Napoleon watched as his center crushed through the heart of the enemy line. He turned to his staff and said, almost calmly, "One sharp blow, and this battle is mine." Below, chaos erupted. The Allied armies split apart, tried to reform, but every messenger arrived too late. Every order met only silence or smoke. The sun blazed brighter, reflecting on frozen ponds and shattered cannon. Napoleon had seized not just the field, but the very rhythm of war. The collapse. By midday, the Allied center was gone. Austrian regiments fled south in panic, while Russian guards fought to the death in the icy marshes near Sachan Lake. French artillery opened fire, shells exploding across the frozen surface, breaking the ice beneath hundreds of men and horses. The air filled with screams, smoke, and steam. From his command post, Napoleon looked down upon the valley. The sunlight turned the battlefield gold. He whispered, "The sun of Austerlitz, it is rising." In less than 6 hours, the combined armies of Austria and Russia, the pride of Europe, were utterly destroyed. Napoleon had lost fewer than 9,000 men. The Allies, more than 30,000. It was not just a victory, it was a masterpiece. The aftermath. That night, Napoleon rode across the field of victory. Broken cannons, banners, and frozen bodies lay beneath the stars. He stopped beside a dying Russian soldier. The man looked up and whispered, "You are not a man. You are the god of war." Napoleon said nothing. He dismounted, covered the man with his own cloak, and walked away into the darkness. At that moment, even his enemies knew they had witnessed something beyond human genius. They had seen the birth of the legend of Austerlitz. The next day, Austria sued for peace. Russia withdrew beyond the Vistula. The map of Europe was redrawn in France's image. And in the hearts of his soldiers, Napoleon was no longer just a general. He was destiny itself.